A quick new idea, daily, from the world's greatest TEDx talks. I'm your host, Atossa Leoni, and this is TEDx Shorts. Today's speaker, Julián Delgado, believes that all English is not created equal. As an immigrant to the United States by way of Colombia, Juliana has lived in communities that use language as much as they play with it. In this episode, they ask us to challenge how we understand language and to think about how we can use words as a way to pursue freedom and radical inclusion.
My passion for the poetics of everyday language began at 5 p.m. on Saturdays at my abuela's dining room, at a table full of loud, unstoppable women. My 5 aunts, plus my mom's 5 aunts, all smoking, some in their bras, some in their rulos, all complaining about the ineptitude of their husbands or the rising prices at the grocery store. Some use grand gestures, pointing with their mouths. Others made up words. Some yelled, some cried. They were all narrating a similar experience, but each one of them put her own twist to her story. Each one used a different word choice, a different rhythm. My mom complained in silence, shaking her head and sighing. My tiate used energized curse words, that hijo de su madre, she would say. That good-for-nothing son of a bitch. My great aunt shut her eyes, drank coffee, and pointed at God. Diosito, what is wrong with this man? Each one putting a different tune, a different music to her story. As a kid, I sat among them in awe, marveled at how elastic, how expansive, how infinite language felt at the dining table. How fun. If my aunts didn't know a word, they would just make it up, laugh about it, and stick it to their husbands as nicknames. In Colombia, I was a loud, energized talker. I wouldn't shut up. I made up words too. But the moment I moved to the States and landed in Miami, all that energy and love for language disappeared. It saddened me that I couldn't access that part of myself that was so excited about language, because my way of speaking with an accent or inventing words or pronouncing words as I heard them was deemed wrong. I said Thanksgiving instead of Thanksgiving. I mix both languages. I have to plancha it. Give me the trapo. Mom wants her chanclas. Oye, ¿estás ready? I remember staying up late to practice pronouncing words, but the kids at school wouldn't make fun of me. I hated myself for not fitting in, not realizing that there was a hierarchy much bigger than me at play here. I felt I was the one who was wrong. And it wasn't only me who was being correct and laughed at. I saw teachers correct some of my peers, usually anyone who wasn't white, shaming immigrant kids for saying quota instead of quarter, la pinabora instead of peanut butter. It seemed all of us were crossing an invisible language boundary, a boundary policed by the teacher and maintained by the students' laughter. We tend to think of language, in this case English, as a closed circle where all of us English speakers exist. A closed circle where correct English is elevated at the center. When someone says something in another language, we know it is outside of that circle. When someone speaks English with an accent or without proper grammar, we know it is inside the circle, but not correct, not at the center. So we push both the language and the people who speak it to the margins. We really don't consider how looking at language as a closed circle with a solid center excludes so many people, so many ways of speaking and making sense of the world. How this in turn creates a hierarchy of language. My abilities as a student, a worker, my value as a human being has been questioned over and over again. And yet, There's beauty and connection in these marginal spaces. For people in the margins, language creates cohesion between us. That different way of speaking is a secret door only some of us have access to, a door to an underworld of language freedom. We wear glitter on our bodies and glitter on our language. Our realities take up space, and therefore we experience a sense of belonging. We add a sense of magic and possibility to the world. We make it less boring and more inviting. Now, think of the ways that you speak, the words that you use. Think of it if you have borrowed words from your parents, your friends. This is how you know you belong to the circles, right? By echoing back that language. Wouldn't our world be that much more interesting? Wouldn't our notion of what it means to be human expand? What would happen if these different ways of using language, of mixing English with other languages, of making up words, were not considered less than, but instead manifestations of creative brilliance? People are, after all, inventing, creating, mixing. What would happen if, for instance, we didn't see English and Spanish as mutually exclusive, as two separate languages, but as open circles touching each other? Imagine legislation written in Spanglish, or traffic signs written in queer slang. Men at work. I want to invite us to suspend the idea of a correct way of speaking, a correct way of using language. And let's allow for those rhythms, those incorrect words at the margins to rise up. Let's listen. Recognize the glitter in each other's way of speaking. Activate that kid at the dining table who is in awe and curious about language and its world. There's endless possibility to bring surprise and magic through language. Let's dance pegadito with language. Let's tune into the ways that each one of us speaks, the many different ways that each one of us makes sense of the world.
The TEDx talk you just listened to was recorded at a TEDx event in San Francisco, California. All TEDx events are independently organized by volunteers who believe in TED's mission of ideas worth spreading. Special thanks to the organizing team at TEDxSoMa. Want to listen to the full talk? Find Juliana's talk and more at TED.com/TEDxShorts. I'm Atossa Leoni. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.